Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the site, and thanks to Margaret and Rosa for inviting me. I always love reading at the art bar, and even virtually, it's a treat. So I'm going to read you some poems from my first three books. I'm going to start with some poems on the theme of family, because during this time, during COVID-19, when we can't hug people we love, I'm quite nostalgic for loved ones who are far away. So I'm going to start with this one, Bathing Our Son. You grasped him under his slippery arms, his body slithering like quicksilver. I poured the warm drops out of a blue cup the length of his shining body as you held him tight, supported his tender, floppy back as I soaked him down. I could hardly breathe. He was so perfect and so exposed. His eyes wide, the steamy room smelling of rose petal soap and shampoo. If you had let him go just for a second, he would have been lost, but he trusted you with his fragile life. When he was clean, you lifted our son gently into the heated towel, cupped his delicate head just so, as we cleared away the soap dish and shampoo bottle, shook out the ratty bath mat. And it wouldn't always be like this, but it was enough for now. And you said, this is what it is to become a family. For my second poem, I'm going to read one that should resonate with you if you have parented a teenage girl, or you've been a teenage girl, or you know a teenage girl, and it's called Adolescence. It's also from my first book. My daughter has learned to contain herself. She curves around her thoughts like a pale pink shell. My daughter is in a new country full of dark ponds and pale sunrises. Things grow there, but I will never see them. Birds flock there and speak in tongues only she understands. My daughter moves farther inside the fortressed rooms of the house she builds deep inside herself. She will give no one the delicate key. And for my third poem, this is from my third book, Ghost Child. The third child is the one I'll never bear, the one who waits quietly behind the swinging door, stares accusingly, her round brown eyes mirrored in the toaster like smudges, stirs the curtain with her soft blue breath, speaks to us without words in the spaces between creaking floorboards and the moist hiss of the radiator, leaves pennies on the mat, blows open the window, slides into my dreams, whispers she has chosen us. Mama, is it time yet? Cries when I turn away. The Secret. This is dedicated to a sister. Her name was Gail. You lay on the yellow blanket in the lilac-filled garden. You were so new, 4 months old, my own little sister. I put the dice in your tiny hand, closed your soft fingers, shook them, then opened up your palm so the dice clicked onto the board. We spent long August afternoons in the sun, you on your back, me on my tummy, playing snakes and ladders together. I showed you how for every ladder there was a snake. You smiled and kicked your legs. And when I told you that one day I'd teach you how to play skipping and ball and even tiddlywinks, you smiled about that too. You were my best friend. I told you all my secrets. You didn't tell me yours, that you had a brain tumor and no one knew. You didn't tell me you wouldn't make it to the first snowfall. You didn't tell me how soon you'd leave me all alone, and my father would go for walks and cry, and my mother would leave for the seaside, and how I'd miss you every day of my life. You could keep a secret better than anyone I knew. I wish you'd love me enough to stay. Night watch. Afterwards, my father was sodden with grief. The loss hung off him like a wet wool coat. Dazed and unbelieving, he walked the fields. Always, it seemed, in the rain. Always alone, sometimes for hours. Everything looked the same, he said. How could grasses grow? How could leaves continue to bud? I was 4. I listened. I thought he'd lost my sister the way he sometimes lost his glasses or his gloves. For weeks, I watched at the window, waiting for him to bring her home. Until then, he'd been so good at finding things. But this was different because she hid so well beneath the ground. My father cleans my shoes. Each Sunday in the hallway, dappled by light from the stained glass in the dark doorway, my father cleaned my shoes, lavished on them rich polish, unthreaded the laces, and shone even the heels, so those black Oxfords were ready for Monday morning, and taught me with his careful ministrations of the tar-like polish that smelled thick and sweet like earth after rain, the importance of school for which he performed each shining stroke and made sure to rub each toe so bright I could see my own reflection clearly in his work. And now, another father poem in this series, A father shouldn't cry. He shouldn't take your hand on the red couch the night before you have to leave. And as he talks, his large hand shouldn't grasp your small hand with the bitten nails tighter and tighter until it hurts. And you turn to look at him, his face clenched, his eyes filled with tears. Even though grown-up men don't cry, and you've never seen a daddy cry before, because you have to leave him to go 3,000 miles away to a cold land. And now you've made him sob. And this is wrong, because everything is upside down. And your father, who should be telling you that everything will be all right, is telling you with his tears that nothing will be all right ever again. And now I'm moving to a different family member with this one. My husband drowns the rats. I don't want to know the details, but of course, I insist on the details. How many rats exactly? The mother and 4 babies, 5, including the runt. And how did they enter the laundry room? When you filled the sink with water from the rusted tap, how long did they float? Was the water boiling or cold? Did they try to scramble out? And when you killed the babies, did the mother squeal? Did her dark eyes meet yours? Was she ready then for death? And how, oh how, did you find it inside yourself to do this thing? And what else don't I know about you, about us? Okay, for the next one, and this is for my husband, it's called Old Coats. We are aging like old coats, the elbows tattered, the buttons dropping off, the wool losing all color. We are more threadbare than I remember, and more sad. The hem no longer holds. There are holes in the pockets. How else to explain all we've lost? Teeth, cartilage, the sense all will work out in the end. My love, we are aging like old coats. But even now, in spite of it all, when chill winds blow, we are still able to keep each other warm. All right, and here I'm moving along to, just bear with me a moment. This is a poem called Your Defibrillator. It's tidy and compact, just below your collarbone, under your pink skin, outlined like a box of cigarettes in a shirt pocket. When you lie on me, I feel the metal imprint hard upon my flesh. If your heart fibrillates, palpitates like a lost bird, the machine delivers an electric shock. You tell me the jolt feels as if a horse hoofed you in the chest. And so that night, as you roll against me, I dream of Pegasus, bringer of lightning from Olympus. And when I tell you as we stir at dawn, you say, that bodes well for me, don't you think? And I nod and trace the tiny coffin-shaped box beneath your skin with my thumb. Okay. Now this one is from my new manuscript. It's not for any of the previous 3 books. This is for my 4th book. And in a related vein, it's called Atrial Fibrillation. My husband gets a new diagnosis. Atrial, a trial, a lair. The heart stutters, flaps like butterfly wings, or tentative clapping in the nearly empty concert hall. Fibrillation, the heart staggers like a bibulous uncle. He doesn't look ill, not now, not yet. The doctor, short-breathed with optimism, talks about a new generation of blood thinners. Now we've moved on to drugs with names like the gauzy Spring Collection in Milan, Eliquis, Pradaxa, Xarelto. You can't be too thin, and neither can your blood. Fibrillation, my husband humming softly at the wheel as we begin the journey to the lake. We don't talk about the other journey he may have to take alone. And I'm moving on now to poems that may have particular resonance for those of you who are poets or journalists, or both. And this is called Working for the Poet. It's based actually on an experience working for a poet on the West Coast, on Galliano Island, when I was in my 20s. When I turned 24, as you passed by the dining room table, you stopped and stroked my hair. A third of your life is over, you said. Happy birthday. At 70, you siphoned your magnificent rage into your fingers, pounded the keys of the old typewriter as if it could give you what you were looking for. Homes for the poor, justice, and good governance. You wrote to prime ministers and presidents, to Trudeau, and this would be Trudeau Sr. Haven't you any sense of shame? Haven't you? Haven't you? Politicians was such a disappointment. This letter is just a feeble appeal, you wrote. Nothing was feeble about the woman you were. More beer, always more beer, with the lamps low and the wind through darkening trees, silhouetted by West Coast moon. You hated growing old. I hated how we were all too young to stand up to you, even Trudeau. I remember how you drove that first foggy night along the finger of the bay, where the line between land and water all but disappeared. I can't see, you said, the bay liquid, you liquid. Why can't I see? We drove into a ditch. We drove into a wall very slowly. You grew angry once because I said I wouldn't want to be a painter and have to give away my work. That's the whole point, you said. You've missed the whole point. And a journalistic poem about the difficult choices we all have to make. Photo of the Doomed Man. This is based, by the way, on an actual photo and an event that happened. I think it was about 8 years ago. Photo of the Doomed Man. He's trapped on the subway tracks, staring at the oncoming train, seconds from death. Do we publish the photo? After 9/11, how can we even ask the question, having watched jumpers float down like sheets of paper, sticks of furniture, dark birds, black snow? We're inured to gutting open the fragile moments between life and death, like a Halloween pumpkin. Reaching in, our hands wallowing in, weighing, even delighting in the viscous horror of the slippery seeds. All right, now before the next one, I'm just going to check the time here and take a sip of water, because this is what happens when people do these kinds of readings, these virtual readings. And I'm going to move on to one last journalistic poem before I move into something a little lighter. So for this one, this is based on a time when I was training journalists in Cambodia and an actual event. Okay, Cambodian host. He's a gracious host, pours tea piping hot into small china cups, lotus white, his days of serving Pol Pot behind him now, those millions of deaths, a gauzy memory. A servant brings cakes with pale icing to the perfectly manicured garden. Our host remembers when wearing glasses was a crime, even if you were 5 years old, and those haunted photos of the starving and tortured taken moments before death. The young girl with the missing tooth, the old man with resigned eyes, staring from the walls of the former schoolhouse, transformed into a place of torture and final cries. Everything for anger, the organization, everything for the great leader. I just felt he was a good person. I don't know why. Our host says he's a Christian now. Christianity forgives, no karma, evil can be redeemed. Let he who is without sin throw the first stone. It was different then. Would you like some more tea? We talk about the weather, very hot. Canada, very nice. The white plates reddening as the sun sets. Wonderful, the way the creamy icing masks the taste of each dried out and appetizing slice. Okay. So as we go into the home stretch, I'm going to read you something very short and a little lighter. A brief meditation upon housework. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so do I. And a dust cloth and a broom, I swear I abhor them all. And here is another brief meditation. A brief meditation upon committees. I said committees were by and large a waste of time, so they put me on the committee to reduce committees. This is not a joke. I think there's a moral here. I just haven't had time to figure it out. I haven't had time to figure anything out. I sit on too many committees. Okay, and now I'm going to read you I have a series of artist poems about the wives and mistresses and significant others of artists. So this one is called Chagall's Wife. I'm tired of looking for him everywhere, in cafes, down back alleys, on rooftops. Sometimes I hear the faint strains of violin wafting overhead. Look up, and there he is, over the moon, again. He takes in strays, homeless women, cows. When he paints, the room smells of chicory, yellow roses, and borscht. It's not that I don't love him. I just wish he could be more, I don't know, down to earth. And for my final poem, I'm going to read All the Lovely Broken People. And this is dedicated tonight to all of you. All the lovely broken people. This is a poem for when you're broken. See how it cradles you in white sheets, brings you cups of cranberry tea, strokes your cheek, then rocks you to sleep, reminds you that even in winter, the sun still shines on red sumac encased in snow. The buds that are meant to bloom will do so in due course, and there is more order and beauty in the world than we can imagine as we hold together the soft, frayed tatters of our lives. This is a poem to sew those torn pieces into ribbons and eventually into kites. Thank you. And I just want to mention that my publisher is the Ottawa-based Borealis Press. So one way to get my books, if you like the reading this evening, is to contact Borealis Press. You can just Google them and contact them. And thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the read.